Welcome, heathens and witches, to the Horn
and Cauldron
podcast. Yeah, we're back at it again. I'm John Norgrove. This is Julie Norgrove. And welcome back to our weekly witchy podcast. It has, in fact, been a while, but that's because it was the holidays.
Yeah,
we were doing food.
Yeah, nice little break for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, we were doing food. We were doing food comas the holiday, where you just like eat food and then black out.
Yeah,
for a little bit.
Yeah. We cooked not only a whole Thanksgiving dinner, but also a whole ham dinner. So we had a lot of leftovers, and I don't have any regrets.
It was delicious. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
What's your favorite Thanksgiving leftover? That's the end of the podcast. Go home. No, that's not what we're talking about today, although it could be. What's up? But, yeah, so before we get started with today, I want to shout out our anniversary that is coming up. It is our 3-year anniversary.
3-year podcast anniversary.
Podcast anniversary, if you will.
Yeah.
And, which you should. And, yeah, so that will be coming up this Sunday.
If you're listening to this when it comes out, so that's
December
3rd.
3rd, sure, yes, at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It is December 3rd, don't worry.
It is? Okay.
Yeah, I'm like 97%
You looked at me and I was like,
certain.
I don't know now.
I'll check while we're doing the podcast, don't worry. But yeah, so that'll be live. That'll be live on YouTube, so youtube.com/nerdjive. However, stuff, just YouTube Nerdjive. You're an adult. I trust you. And yeah, so we'll be live on YouTube just answering questions and hanging out, and I don't know how long this is going to be, and I don't know what questions we're going to have because that's not how we do this. Heck, I don't even know if I'm going to remember exactly how to live stream, so we get to figure that out minutes before we go live. Like I generally do.
Also talk about, you know, what's going on and our plans.
Yep,
for
2024
next year,
plans.
For year 4, can you believe?
4 years of this.
Wait, 4 years? Yeah.
Well, it would be 3 years of this, and the 4th year is beginning.
Yeah, man.
So,
oof, that math.
Prepare your body for 104s, my dudes. It's gonna be sweet. It's gonna be sweet.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'll be fun. Come along and join us for that on again Sunday, December 3rd at 3 p.m. Pacific time. And yeah, we're just gonna confuse people. 3 p.m. PST, and yeah, we'll catch you guys there. So. Moving along to the actual episode that you are here for, today we are talking about hearses and hexes.
No. Try it again.
Curses and hexes.
Nope. Try it again.
No, that's 100% correct.
I was just seeing if it
we're talking about controversy in the witch space.
Yes. Yes, we are. Because curses and hexes are a very controversial subject.
I did not. I'm already learning a thing. Are they controversial?
Yes. And you're gonna find out why. But first, before we get into that, we want to say this for our 10 longtime listeners. All 10 of you, thank you.
You're
or
the best.
11, I think we might be up to now. Yeah. What a great ROI! 3 years, 10. 11 listeners.
Yeah. Shout out if you're one of those numbers. Just type a number in the just comment a number. Any number. Favorite number, least favorite number.
And we'll give you that number. You can be whatever that number is.
R, anything you want to do.
It's like a jersey.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works. I'm not a sporty one.
That's true.
So before we get into talking about curses and hexes, we are not here to gatekeep. Our longtime listeners can definitely attest to that. So if you're new here, welcome. We try to have this be a safe space to curiously and respectfully explore a lot of different topics within the pagan and witch and heathen spheres.
Yeah, spaces.
Alternative religions.
Well, as well as an exploration of the history and like import and practices around those things. So like,
and our personal takes on things.
Yeah. But we're not. If you do a thing, that's you. That's you. We're not here to judge that. You do you, dog.
Yeah, so if you choose to curse or not to curse, that's totally up to you. And
like the classic Shakespearean line, to curse or not to curse, that's entirely up to you.
Yeah, I'll give it to you. Yeah, that's close enough.
Old Billy Shakes said that one time.
Oh, boy. Yeah. So anyway, let's talk about curses and hexes. The whole idea about them being bad or giving you bad luck is actually not as deeply rooted in magical practice as you may think.
Are you talking about the, like, if you do a curse, then it's gonna come back to you? Like the, I'm gonna be dead real with you. In my mind, that goes as far back as, like, that Three Witches movie from the 80s. Where they, like, blow to light the candles, which is, like, the coolest effect ever.
Isn't that practical magic?
Practical magic.
Yeah.
In my mind, it goes, like, that far back and no further.
A little further back than that.
Because I feel like I've read enough historical stuff where they're like, this thing happened, and this curse was wrought upon the town, and that witch just glided off into the night, dog. And you're like, okay, well, that seemed pretty effective. Cool, I guess.
Sounds like her spell worked.
Yeah.
Well, in actuality, the basic premise discouraging curses goes back less than 100 years. So
99 years, 345 days.
Actually, we're just going to be talking about the late 20th century. You know, the late 1900s.
That's nice. It's delicious. I love that.
I love saying that.
I love being born in the late 20th century.
Yeah,
I have so much scope on the world.
Yeah, I love that I've been around since the turn of the century. So
long before the turn of the century, I remember going to shopping malls.
So the idea sort of behind this premise that, like, doing a curse is bad luck. And by the way, when I say curse, I mostly mean curses or hexes or any of those sort of offense type spells. I'm really just going to use the word curse because it's easier for me to not switch.
Yeah, we have to choose like a word to describe the entire hyperclassification. But, like, so think of, like, curse, hex. These are, like, generally targeted things. They're generally, like, and let me tell you, the size of the quotes that I am making, so big. But, like, dark magic, you know, or, like, antagonistic, or anything to that effect, right? So, like, there's, like, a bunch of different words for these things, and in some cultures, that's just a spell. You got a spell for making the apples, apple blossoms turn into apples on the tree. You got a spell for fuck that guy over there. It's just a spell. You know what I mean? So, like, like, we're just using curse as, like, a generic English catch-all.
Yeah, exactly. So, we need, in order to talk about this idea that a curse gives you, like, bad luck or bad karma, we need to talk about the threefold law.
Okay.
Or also known as the rule of three or the law of return. And essentially, the threefold law says that whatever energy or spell you put out, it comes back to you threefold. So if you're like, I want that guy to trip on the concrete, and it works, then you will trip on the concrete 3 times, or you will get 3 times as worse tripping on the concrete. Sometimes in the pagan circle, this is referred to as just karma. But it's not technically karma as in the ancient belief structure as we know it.
It's karma, the 1990s sitcom euphemism, not karma, the actual ancient practice.
It's karma, the new age term, and not karma, the ancient practice. I was actually going to define karma, the ancient practice here, and boy, let me tell you, that's going to be its own podcast
it's karma
episode.
Without an H,
because there are so many different and nuanced explanations and definitions of karma depending on what exactly it is that you believe. That's a whole episode.
Yeah, so we'll just have to do a deep dive into karma. Look forward to that. Let us know if that's something that you would want.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the threefold law's origins are an interpretation of the Wiccan Rede, which in short is, quote, "and it harm none, do what ye will."
I mean, that's just saying, like, do whatever you want, don't be an asshole.
Do whatever you want as long as it doesn't hurt anybody.
Yeah.
Now, this is This was written, the Wiccan Rede was written by Doreen Valiente in 1964. She, along with Gerald Gardner, was a notable part of creating the Wiccan religion, as well as, and in addition to, today's Sabbats. We have a whole series of pub chats talking about Gerald Gardner and Doreen Valiente and the other creators of Wicca, and we will eventually get into a deep dive on Wicca itself. That's just a large piece there.
Yeah,
and
it may have to be a multi-part episode.
It most likely will be.
Yeah.
And so if you're interested in hearing more about those, there's sort of like little snippets in a few different pub chats. Those will be in the recommended episodes in the description below.
Yeah.
So, definitely check those out. It is wild. Now, we also see a reference to the threefold law in Gerald Gardner's 1949 novel, which is probably where Doreen Valiente got this idea, because she was homies with Gerald Gardner and actually wrote a huge portion of what we know as the Wiccan religion. And when I say Wiccan is sort of like a general thing, it has definitely evolved since
branched off
since
budded.
then.
Yeah.
But all as religions do.
Yeah.
So this novel was called High Magic's Aid, and we basically see that quote in there. And the Wiccan Rede was also written about by Raymond Buckland. If you are an old school Llewellyn books fan, you'll definitely recognize that name. And he wrote about that in the late 1960s. So this idea of doing a spell, like a curse or something that is antagonistic towards another person, really only dates back to a fiction novel that some guy wrote who created a religion in the mid 1900s.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's and in reality, this is just the idea that you shouldn't do harm. This isn't necessarily linearly if you do it, it's going to come back 3 times. That sounds nice, right? It's round, everything's got 3s and shit. So that works.
Yeah.
But really they're saying without doing harm, do whatever you want. But it's also kind of not saying don't do harm. It's just saying if you're not causing harm, do what you want.
Yeah.
It's not really telling you but if you are causing harm, do 10% of what you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or whatever.
Now, that's not to say that prior to this, there wasn't any ideas like that. Going back as far as we have human history, we have this idea of the golden rule, which is treat others like how you want to be treated. So the thing about paganism is that it's not really organized. Yeah. So you don't really have a book that tells you these are the rules, right?
There's never a council.
So everybody's kind of making up their own rules as they go along. So it's kind of wherever it is that you want that to be. And people didn't really encourage antagonistic spells or curses prior to this, but they also didn't discourage them.
Yeah. Well, I think that the idea of the antagonistic spell, the curse, having some sort of deleterious reaction is maybe part of an evolution in literature or in story than it did in actual practice. And the reason why I say that is that you have stories where somebody does a evil curse or does a dark mage or whatever, and it twists their body and gets them or whatever. But those are also newer stories.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas in an older story, it's this guy did a terrible curse and then definitely got married and had kids and retired on the beach. And you're fucking rad, dog.
Yeah.
Because he didn't piss off a god, and they were he did okay because he did a curse, but he made sure to step over that Zeus statue and he didn't start no shit with that guy or whatever, So I wonder if, and there's obviously, in my opinion, no way to definitely make a decision on this, but I feel this may have to do with the Western evolution in story for the bad one to be doing that stuff, the simplification of the hero v villain into the wicked witch of the whatever doing wicked witch stuff, giving a gal an apple.
Yeah.
Turn it into a dragon. Or
well, we can, I see a pretty interesting, like, through line of, like, a historical timeline for this. So, this, like, the threefold law and the idea of, like, it'll come back to you threefold, comes from a time when these particular witches, these particular magicians, these particular pagans were very inspired by the theosophy movement of the late 1800s, and that was like a time when a lot of ceremonial magic was big, and that grew out of this like idea from the late Middle Ages that ceremonial magic was only done by like rich people because they were the only ones that could really afford like robes and books and stuff and could read, specifically read Latin.
Fancy rich dudes stealing all of our sweet hedge stuff, bro. That's what that is.
Yeah, right? Yeah. And like the whole idea.
Also, are we even gonna believe right now that like a group of fancy rich dudes in like whatever England or wherever definitely weren't doing a ceremony because fucking Bob talked shit at the council meeting last week and we're like, guess what, guys? Bob's gonna trip on some cobblestone. Let's get this together.
Yeah,
exactly. Like, are we really gonna believe that he never participated in some curses?
Yeah.
Get out of here with
also, that. It's a really great way to get people not to curse you by saying if you curse someone, it's going to be bad back at the caster. I keep coming back to that. So anyways, we're going to talk about some sort of historical curses that I think are particularly fun. So our first stop, and all of these references are going to be in the description as well, in the sources. But these first two this first one is coming out of an actual book. So this is coming from the Sorcerer's Screed, which is a book of Icelandic magic spells. It was written in 1940 by a man named Joachim Magnus Eggertsson, and he claims to have based this book off of a manuscript that he found dating back to 1094. Written by the people of an Icelandic settlement called Kreisuvik. Now, this guy never showed anyone this manuscript, so we have zero proof it existed. We also don't have proof that it didn't exist. It's just unlikely. Now, this book primarily focuses on staves or sigils. And again, we're not gatekeeping. Maybe this guy had this. Maybe he did an Aleister Crowley and like some spirit that lived back then gave him all this information and he wrote it down.
He found some tablets.
Doesn't matter to me.
Tablets. Don't worry, I wrote down those tablets.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. So this book primarily focuses on staves or sigils done in a particularly Icelandic or Nordic fashion. And there are not a whole lot of curses in this, but there is a curse.
There are definitely some.
Yeah, but there is a curse called, most of them are very heavily reliant on the visuals, and this is mostly in audio format, so that's not very helpful.
Yeah.
So there's one that is on page 131 called the Livestock Unaliver. And this one, you have a specific stave that you are inscribing. And basically this is the whole spell. If you want your enemy to lose their livestock, inscribe this stave on parchment and place in one of his horse's hoof prints, and it will do the job. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Put
it in some footprint. This is very reminiscent of that horror movie where like that family bought a house and were like everything was starting to get like spooky or whatever, and then there was like they found like a rune carved, like a box with like a rune carved skull or whatever, like underneath the house, like directly under the bed of, I don't know, whatever, the kid who was possessed or whatever the heck that movie was about. Like, it's very that energy.
Yeah.
And a lot of these are like, so this book is a very fun book. I enjoy this book. The Sorcerer's Screed. It has like stuff like that where you're like, oh, that's like interesting and fairly specific. And then it has the complete, like, what you got to do and how you got to do it for the, like, wearing a dude's pants to steal his success. Wearing a dude's leg skin as a pair of pants.
Gives a whole new meaning to leggings.
Yeah. And there's, like, one where, like, you have to, like, catch it. Like, I remember there's one, and I don't remember what the, like, effect is for, but you have to, like, catch a magpie and secure a drop of its blood its blood at the midnight full moon, but you can't like hurt the magpie. So it has to be like you can't like kill the magpie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you have to keep it alive.
Yeah.
Right? But you still need to like acquire a drop of its blood at midnight.
And it's very specific
it's like
too.
It'll
be like it must come
stuff.
from the left wing of the magpie.
Yeah, like what who's coming up with this,
you're like,
bro?
Who does this?
Yeah, so like it's kind of all over the place, but it's a pretty interesting book, especially if you're looking for like I like it as a jumping off point for like staves and like spells and stuff in the like Icelandic Norse sigil stave sort of space.
Yeah, regardless of its historical accuracy, it's a pretty fantastic book.
I mean, 1940 is pretty historical.
Yeah, I mean, it is. The early 19th century. Yeah. So, you know, or 20th century. It's a pretty great book, so you could definitely check that out.
I actually have 2 copies.
Yeah, we do. So moving along, we have the Magical Greek Papyri. And this one you can find linked below through the Internet Archive, where you can check it out for free. This is a collection, a huge collection, mind you, of papyri that range from the years 100 to 400 AD. Now, that's not to say that people weren't doing this stuff prior or after, but this is the time frame these things came from. It is very likely using the clues that we find in this like absolutely huge treasure trove of magical papyri that people have been doing this for like a long time. And this is basically like, this is the you go on to Etsy to purchase a spell from somebody kind of thing. This is like the commercial, the commercialization,
commercially available spells.
Exactly, you went to buy the spell. So most of the spells here that we in the Magical Greek Papyri that we'd consider as curses are about splitting up a couple. Nice. There's a lot of love magic-y stuff happening in there, or bindings. There's a lot of bindings, a lot of like make these people break up. And then there are others that are more along the lines of a curse, like this one that I'm going to read to you that's found in PGM 4 or IV 3255 through 74. And this curse is for insomnia. Now, before I say this, there are this is in sort of 2 languages. This has been translated into English, and then there is another language. I am not sure what this is saying. So, if all of a sudden we disappear and you never hear from us again, I definitely opened the book and I definitely read from the book, and now it's like Evil Dead. This is what I'm
gonna say. Don't open the book. Don't read the book.
It's too late now.
You know what? If you're gonna read the book, read it out of order. Read a little bit, forget what you just read, read the second half.
Nope,
Guys,
we're going forward.
Don't summon the demon.
Yeah.
Come on. And I have a collection of demonology books. Don't summon them. Don't read all of a page.
Let's do it, y'all. All right. So here goes.
Not rock and roll.
This is the spell. So take an unbaked brick and with a bronze...
thought of an unbaked brick as being a thing. And like, obviously it's a thing. But in my mind, it's like, oh yeah, like brick dough.
Yeah.
You mean mud, dog?
Yeah.
It's a weird way to say mud.
Take some brick dough. Store-bought is fine if you can't make it. Take an unbaked brick and with a bronze stylus draw an ass like a donkey running, and on its face write "Io, Io," and on its neck in the shape of a little bell "Io Oe," and on its back "Lerthemino," and on its breast Sabbath, and under its hooves Abrasax. Then smear the brick with the blood of Typhon, which is, if I remember correctly, generally like a goat, and a pig with the juice of an onion. You could very easily buy
juice of an onion.
Yeah, it's
you just squeeze it like an orange.
It would really be easy to purchase the blood of these animals at the market at this time as well. Yeah, by the way, so the spell, the spell on the brick written with more blood goes like this: Io Erbeth, Io Pakebeth, Io Bolchaseth, Io Bolchaseth, Saraum Kokoloktom. Pathathanks the Shaker, Io Erbeth, a pumps louth labath, Siso Pukere, you fortunate one, Tesho Patanak Thende, Myfor Irebalon Chithi, Rupethe Aperma Pelops, the shaker of the world, I call upon you, great Typhon. Io Erbeth, Io Pakabeth, Io Bolchoseth, because I am he, and then you say your name. Hear me in this business which I am performing, Lethermino Aruzoron, Bathau Chiamsifis, O great Typhon. Lerthamino, attend this magical operation which I am performing, because it is our great and honored name that I am saying and writing. Abermenthau formula. So the formula is the thing that you want to have happen. So this would be saying the name of the person and that you want them to be awake. And then underneath the ass, so on the bottom of this brick, you would write, give her the heaving of the sea, total wakefulness of Mendes, and give her the punishments.
Total wakefulness of Mendes is... That's rough.
Yeah.
That is a very threatening spell.
This is a pretty intense spell.
It's pretty great. Great. Also, that's like a lot of words to write on this brick, dog. Also, what do you do with this brick? Do you bake this brick now?
Unclear.
Do you just store this brick?
Unclear.
I wonder if you gotta like mud it into somebody's house.
There are some other spells that I looked at in this that are generally like sort of antagonistic spells or defensive spells. And when you're trying to do something against someone, whether you're causing them harm or just making sure that they're not hurting you, you generally take the thing that you're using as like the physical representation of the spell and you bury it, smothering it. And you're it also sort of acts as like binding it and keeping it in place and keeping it, contained. And another thing about this is a pretty like impressive spell to read aloud, and I feel very magical reading that spell aloud. One of the things about magic in ancient Rome and ancient Greece.
You know how you break this spell? I just thought about this.
What?
Well, you've just done all this work so that way somebody can't fall asleep. And if you want to cure their insomnia, you just bake that brick.
Yeah, you just bake the brick.
You just bake that brick and you just throw that brick. And that person's going to go to sleep. Guarantee it.
Yeah, done. One of the things about doing spells from the magical Greek papyri is the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans believed that the more forceful your wording for a spell, the more forcefully you could say something, either like in the tone of your voice or in the words that you're using, the more impressive and the better results that you would get for the spell.
It's way fancier.
Yeah.
Right? If you're just like mumbling gently a curse, not that fancy.
I mean, but that's pretty cool too.
If you're standing on like the precipice of a cliff looking down on a city screaming into a thunderstorm, people are going to be like, all right, guys, we maybe move out of this fucking city. You see Bob's up there screaming at the thunderstorm again. I don't like it. I don't like what it implies. I'm going to go somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a pretty fun one that I found for Insomnia.
That's very cool.
There were others. There's a bunch of really interesting stuff.
Insomnia is also an incredibly fucked up.
It's so catty,
dog.
It's so
it's
catty.
Not like, oh, I want you to hurt yourself. Like, okay, the Icelandic screed spell is like you're gonna lose one of your cows. Get hungry, dude. And this one's just like your legs are gonna do that tingly leg thing when you're laying down in bed, and you're just like not gonna go to sleep. And there's gonna be like a lump, and you're gonna have to like refluff your hay or whatever. And you're gonna lay down, and a guard's gonna knock on the door because he thought he heard something around the corner, and you're like, "Oh, I gotta deal with this again."
Yeah, that's psychological.
And then you're gonna lay down, and you gotta get up because you gotta go pee all of a sudden.
That's
or whatever.
Like you're seeing that person on the regular, and you're like, "Oh, you look so tired today."
Yeah.
Huh?
Is everything all right?
And they're like, "Man, I just like haven't slept since like the last quarter moon," and you're like, "Huh? I wonder what could have happened that would cause
it's super
something
unfortunate
like that."
Also, I bought you this brick. So, this is for you. Maybe it'll help. Put it in your house, dog. Get closer to it.
Yeah, so that's super fun. And I every time I look at the magical Greek papyri, I am just delighted by what I find.
Yeah,
so look forward to seeing more videos that I'm doing on my social media, reading some of these magical Greek papyri texts, because they're fantastic. And I love them so much. So next stop, we're going backwards in time again. This time we are going to talk about the execration texts. These are ancient Egyptian texts that are written on clay, stone, or on figurines. And these date from like 2600 BCE to about 1070 BCE. So these are like thousands of years old.
Yeah.
And this is sort of like the oldest of these, like 2600 BCE, is kind of like some of the oldest time frames that we really have for a lot of the like information about magical stuff. Like some of the oldest deities that we've talked about come from as far back as this. Like this is very, very old. So the text on these is typically written in red or black ink on a figurine or on a clay pot. The color doesn't particularly have a symbolism as far as I can tell here, although in some cases it may have. It's more along the lines of these were easy inks to get. So, and they were typically available to just about everybody. Now, normally what you would do with these is the curse is written on the figurine or the pot, and then the figurine or pot would be bound, like tied up with rope, then smashed, then stomped, then stabbed, then cut, then spat on, then locked in a box, then urinated on, then burned, and then buried.
That is very dramatic.
Now, not all of the steps would happen to all of these things, but it's clear that most objects that we have found incorporate multiple steps, and some of them multiple times, like stab it 4 times with a spear and then stomp on it with your left foot once. That sort of a thing. Sure. We can definitely sort of see that in some of these. And there's not a lot in the way of inscriptions because these are very old, but it's also very difficult to get the information about these because they are in such poor condition thanks to the manner in which they were done. But this is another one where we see that like the object that we are doing, that we're basically putting this spell on, has been typically buried. Mm-hmm. So all of these steps happen and then it's buried or it's smothered, and sometimes underneath foundations these sort of things are found. And same thing with the Greeks and the Romans. It's very possible that they got the idea from the Egyptians with this. So I was able to find one inscription that I thought was particularly fun, and some of it is missing, so I'm just going to go with what we have. And one spell tells the caster to do this to a figurine specifically. So spit on him 4 times, trample on him with the left foot, smite him with a spear, slaughter him with a knife, place him on the fire, and then spit on him on the fire many times.
That's so dramatic.
You're getting it really out of your system there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, they're like, you know what? Join a gym. Join a boxing gym. Throw some punches at a punching bag. Work that out. You got to work that out, bro.
Yeah, exactly. So those ones are pretty fun. Now, this sort of takes us in a slightly different direction now, because we're still going to talk about curses. We're still going to talk about old timey stuff. And we're still going to talk about Egyptians. But I want to talk about the curse of the pharaohs. Now, the curse of the pharaohs is this idea that there is a curse cast on those who disturb a mummy's tomb. We see this in a ton of different movies.
Like almost all mummy movies.
Yeah, like almost every mummy movie.
Yeah, if you got a movie and there's gonna be mummies in it, or you're gonna like show the pyramids more than twice, unless it's a Transformers movie. Mummy's curse.
Or there's aliens.
Yeah, or there's aliens. Well, sometimes still mummy's curse, but then come to find out that curse is
sometimes
aliens.
Both. Yeah. So, I want to talk about this because this is actually a pretty common way that most people outside of a magical sphere think about curses specifically. Now, the curse of the pharaohs is supposed to cause accidents, illness, and sometimes even death. And there are examples of curses that were placed on tombs. But these are actually very rare because we think at the time that these people were buried, it would have been unthinkable to just open up a tomb, much less desecrate or rob it.
Yeah.
Now there are ones out there.
Think of it like how often do you see a grave that has been caged over?
Yeah.
Not very often. But there was like a hot minute where that was like very popular in Eastern Europe because they were like, listen, we think vampires. So we're just gonna cage every grave. We're gonna like stake every body. We're just gonna be, you know what, we're gonna be extra careful just in case vampires. Right? Yeah. And now, like, you don't really gotta worry about that. Right?
Yeah.
But like, I'll tell you what, those countries, the people who live near those cemeteries, they're gonna be real happy when the zombie apocalypse comes, like Romero style. Or whatever, and they're coming out of the ground.
And they're just, like, stuck.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, they just scratch out of a cage, and that guy's like, dude, thanks, Grandpa. Cage him. That's the solution.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Right? Exactly.
So, like, again, this is one of those, like, back then it would have been, like, bonkers to think of somebody, like, kicking the door into the Pharaoh's tomb is a incredibly bold strategy, Cotton.
Yeah.
So, like, obviously you don't need to worry about that kind of stuff, whereas nowadays, you know, England were declared. So
yeah. Now the places where we do see curses on placed on tombs, like people to come in and desecrate or change things or whatever, they appear to be mostly directed at political rivals. It was not uncommon for the politics of a previous dynasty to be erased by its successor.
Yeah.
So that is something that we do see, but we do have limited information with that. But the idea that all mummies are cursed is both true and also we don't know, because this is all that we know of. Right? Yeah. We weren't physically there.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, certainly very possible that the idea behind putting intention into the embalming of a beloved
we know
figure,
the curses were like, or we know that the mummies were like magicked up, bro.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
You didn't take it to like Bob's Mummification Emporium, right?
Yeah.
You had like a bunch of priests, and there was like a whole bloody to-do, you know? So like, it was a deal.
Yeah, now the most famous of these curses is associated with Tutankhamun's tomb. Howard Carter discovered and opened Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922. And there's a whole bunch of stuff about Tutankhamun's curse, which is really super fascinating. I want to talk about a little bit of it here. After it was opened, Egyptologist James Henry Breasted also worked on the tomb. And when he was returning home one day, he heard a faint, almost human cry and discovered that his canary was eaten by a cobra being the symbol of the Egyptian monarchy.
Yeah.
And that the snake had essentially broken into his house and the cage just to eat his bird.
Or was that bird being a yappy, dumb bird, and that snake was like, there's food in there?
Or was the snake already in there? Know. We don't know. After that,
unknown mysteries.
Lord Carnarvon, who financed the expedition to open Tutankhamun's tomb, accidentally cut a mosquito bite on his face while he was shaving. He didn't even realize there was a mosquito bite there. Mm-hmm. And the cut bite became infected, and he got blood poisoning and died as a result.
Yeah. Well, that's actually not uncommon.
Exactly.
Be careful when you're shaving.
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, yes, the creative Sherlock Holmes.
That Conan Doyle.
That guy was a part of the spiritualist movement, which is sort of happened in tandem with the Theosophist movement, which was like sort of at its peak during this time frame as well. He suggested that Carnarvon's death was caused by elementals created by Tutankhamun's priests to guard the royal tomb. He was dead serious, by the way, when he said this. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Sir Bruce Ingram was given a mummified hand that came out of this tomb. I don't think it was from Tutankhamun himself, but a mummified hand with like a bracelet that read, "Cursed be he who moves my body. To him shall come fire, water, and pestilence." Soon after, Sir Bruce Ingram's house burned down, and there was a flood after it was rebuilt. So technically, 58 of the 58 people who visited the tomb, only 8 died within a dozen years. So this is one of those situations where you can read into it and say, this is definitely a curse manifesting itself. But you can also say, no, 'tis coincidence.
That's just what snakes do. And Lord Carnarvon should have just cleaned his bloody razor better and, like, paid attention when he was shaving. And Bruce Ingram, one, sir, be more safe with candles. We've talked about this.
Yeah.
And secondly, maybe pay attention when you're building your house, dog. A little too close to the river. You knew this area had floodplains.
Yeah.
So, like, maybe sus, but also maybe 3 dumb boys.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
So if you're interested in that, there's a lot of really interesting information about
there's
the Curse
so
of Tutankhamun's
like,
tomb.
yeah.
And the other really fun one that I almost put in here was the Curse of the Hope Diamond, which is another like historical big timey curse.
Like curse, yeah, sure.
So I'm not talking about that here today. We'll probably talk about that another time because I read that and I was like torn apart by dogs, you say.
To shreds, you say.
Yeah, to shreds. Yeah.
Nice.
So that's really kind of the idea of what curses looked like in like ye olde ancient times.
Right. Well, yeah. And it makes for a good story. And you got to think at the height of like we're doing imperialism tomb robbing.
Yeah.
That was also the height of the, like, that's where you got a lot of those, like, books and those stories from. So you have to think, like, most people's interactions with the idea of curses is, like a mummy movie or book and, like, adventures, some English adventure dude or Australian adventure dude or whatever, like, book, or, like, some book about like a hoodoo thing happening. Like if you're in America, it would have been like a book about a hoodoo thing.
Or voodoo or something voodoo like thing that,
or whatever. So like a lot of our curse stories are in general, like you done did a bad curses.
Yeah.
Curse you, curse your family, curse your horse. Like that kind of energy.
Yeah.
And it's not until later that you think that you start seeing stories where it's like this person flew too close to the sun with a curse. And it came back and it got him, and now look at them. They look like a monster. Whatever the heck. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally. So, next we need to talk about black magic. Or low magic.
I have never heard the term low magic refer to black magic.
They are not necessarily interchangeable.
Synonymous.
Yeah, they're not necessarily synonymous, but they are very much linked together. And curses are often called black magic. They can also be called low magic. So in 1456, Johannes Hartlieb, a Bavarian physician, decided that black magic included divination and demonic magic. He was okay with most herb-based magic, because that was kind of medicine, right, back then.
Yeah.
And he started
He's a Bavarian physician. He did herb magic, bro.
Yeah. And he started the idea that this division of magic is based on the intent of magic.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and if he's saying demonic magic, of course he's going to say divination magic, right? Because, like, 1456, Bavarian physician, he's probably doing church stuff.
Yeah.
Right? The Bible says, don't suffer no diviners to live. It's a mistranslation when you see it say that it's, or like the way that I've always heard this talked about, is that the like suffer no witches or whatever to live is like actually a mistranslation. It's specifically no like seers, no diviners.
Yeah.
Like nobody's seeing the future. Those guys can't do it. Like, if you look at the oldest texts.
Yeah.
Like, those guys are bad guys. So, of course, it's going to be like, what are you doing? The thing that, like, the Bible single-handedly calls out?
Yeah.
Or demon stuff? Those seem like bad boy things. So, black magic.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
Yeah, those seem shadowy.
Yeah.
So, of course.
So, with him being sort of the grandfather of this idea, and sort of the coining of the phrase of black magic, the acceptability of herb and folk magic things, because it's not always herb based, but sometimes it's a little more magic-y and a little less medicine-y. This continued on through most of the Middle Ages, and most of this type of magic was performed by village healers and really sort of sat on the line between magic and medicine, or even magic and psychology. And it was a thing where you needed to have village healers. You couldn't just have everybody come into the city to be healed. So, you couldn't go too far, thinking of this from like a Middle Middle Ages perspective, you couldn't go too far with branding everything to be black magic, because then you would have a bunch of people dying from simple illnesses that could be treated locally, and they'd either have to come into town, which means that those farms are not, or those, whatever job those people are doing. That rural community is doing, they're gonna have to put that on hold. And a lot of these physicians were sort of, they had wealthy patrons, so landowners and royals and like members of the court, and they make their money through taxes. So you can't outlaw all of the doctors.
Yeah, well, and I mean, you have to think, right? Like, from a purely practical standpoint, if you're like all herbalism is evil, then like, yeah, sure, your population's diminishing, but also if like the sweet old lady in the cottage at the top of the hill is giving out herbs that make my tummy doesn't hurt, and you're saying, oh, your stomach hurts, suffer, dog, just wait it out or whatever.
Yeah, like, your stomach hurts, then God wanted it to hurt.
Whose team do you think I'm gonna be on? The asshole who's telling me to suffer, or the lady who's like, this is just chamomile tea, dog, this isn't even magic, this is just regular ass tea.
Yeah.
So like, for obvious reasons, as well as like the line between that stuff is like pretty blurry, right? Nowadays, we think of it a little bit more like science magic as this like hard line. It isn't, by the way. But we like think about it as that hard line or whatever. But like back in the day, like, yeah, sure, maybe herbalism was magic or whatever the heck. But like, you also had like court doctors being like, I don't know, this guy's heirs are wrong.
Yeah, his humors are out of balance. Yeah.
Yeah, right?
A thing that a doctor would commonly say to you all the way up and through the 1800s.
Yeah, give him a tincture of this poison. I don't know, his head feels a little weird, so his skull seems a little weird, so I guess we're gonna have to do a thing about it, like whatever nonsense that was.
Yeah.
So
Now, of course, this idea dramatically changed in certain areas and in certain times, like the witch hunts, the inquisitions, and the demonization of any type of magic and witchcraft became more prevalent. We're not going to be talking about witch hunts, inquisition, all that stuff here. That is a huge meaty episode that we can't do that justice by talking about that here. So asterisk, put a pin in that, babe.
That'll be a different episode.
Because we're coming back to it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to switch to talking about high and low magic. This is a term that I see thrown about on social media a lot. Like high magic being, more morally good to do or easier to do, and low magic being like, ew, low magic, or like low magic becoming more synonymous with the idea of curses or hexes or black magic, things that you shouldn't be doing, take the high road kind of thing. And this one is a lot like the threefold law. So the idea of high and low magic is the newest of the things that we're going to be talking about today. And that was actually first written down in 2009, this century.
Yeah. Yeah.
By a guy
this interpretation of high and low magic.
Yes. By a guy named Robert M. Place. And he believed that white or high magic was used to get closer to or to commune with spiritual beings. Examples that he used of this are strikingly insensitive and a little elitist and racist in my interpretation.
You can read the rest of this because I have a whole thing about how racist this immediately sounds.
Because he talked about this being like shamanism, and then black or low magic was done to bring some sort of benefit to the caster. Yeah. And when he talks about this, he primarily talks about less about indigenous practices similar to shamanism and more like indigenous practices that didn't involve a psychoactive substance.
Or white people. So, okay. So this is a thing that's been going on for a while. Europe's been pretty bangers about being racist AF. There's a lot of racism in a lot of pagan practice.
Yes.
We talked about this in our Odinism podcast for like obvious reasons.
A lot. And our Toxic Internet Witchcraft podcast.
Of course, right. We now live in an incredibly sensitized society to these things, but while we are sensitized to these things, we are also sort of blinded by that like sensitivity from some obvious shit that is just racism, right? And like this kind of talking point, like you can believe that like high magic is like white magic and low magic is black magic and like not be racist, but it feels racist, right? It feels very like the white is right sort of energy that you get from those sort of people all the time. In general, I think the idea of high magic, so we're just gonna like transition to my bold opinion here. Because like if like you can believe whatever you want and I'm not gonna like judge you or whatever, because like that's you, it's your practice. So who cares? But the idea of high magic and low magic intrinsically is classist and is intrinsically oppressive, in my opinion. Now, to that end, I think of, if I were to define those two parameters, I would think of high magic as like a bunch of dudes in a stuffy room doing like 500 step rituals and such, and low magic like 3 dudes in a field with some candles doing what needs to get did. You know what I'm saying? So to that end, like, I don't necessarily believe that it has to be a classed discussion, but I think that it has historical classification in it. Just like considering white magic good magic and black magic bad magic, I think intrinsically has to do with, and this may purely just be because as an American, I feel like we're even more like sensitized to these things. Like I feel like the idea now or to you may not have a racial implication, and I think that that's perfectly reasonable, but I think that in general it not only has pretty implied racial implications to it, between like white magic being good and black magic being bad. This is like a whole thing in literature and discussions and like culture across American history, whereupon like white is good and clean and pure and anything brown or black is negative or bad or dirty or cheap or something like that. This is probably why all of these ugly ass house remodels are just like white everything. It's the least exciting way you can possibly make your house look. Again, it's your house and your decision. That's on you. Like, I'm not hating, but I think it's ugly. So deal with that, I guess, whatever. But at the same time, like, I get the like implied lightness and darkness and like balancing act of it all and like that sort of a thing. So I'm not like I think that if you were to have this conversation, removing or trying to censor a conversation using things like white magic or black magic or things like high magic and low magic is impossible and doesn't actually solve any problems and is a waste of time. I think that like trying to steer us away from these things doesn't solve the problem. It just hides the racism of it. Whereas I think that you can use these like I would never think to classify something between high and low magic, because magic's just magic to me. Like, it doesn't matter whether you're doing like a big ritual or you're like, you know, doing a little thing over your food or whatever. And the whole white magic, black magic thing also has some pretty churchy implications. Yeah. Right? Because, like, obviously, like, black magic is bad, and if you're doing magic, you're doing black magics. You know, it's very, like, 1970s satanic panic bullshit. But, like, to that end, and I've not read this, like whatever Robert M. Place wrote, and he might not be trying to imply some racist shit. He might be. I don't know. I've never read his book. And honestly, like, that's not interesting to me. Classifying shit like that is kind of whatever. But I think that there is a place where we should be having a conversation about these things. And like, you know, I think we're kind of having that conversation in the like light and like light, bright, like smiles.
Like good vibes only.
Yeah. People, and like people who do curses and people who are against curses. And I think that the specificity of conversation is more important than like, I do white magic, attack me, or like I do black magic, attack me, or whatever. That like just like raw antagonism is sort of like, I don't know, maybe not conducive to the betterment of our understanding of magical practices in history, like throughout time and across the world. So yeah, also, I just thought about this, but this dude in 1456 invented a term that is like infinitely used in rock and roll music.
Yeah.
This guy's like, I don't know about this demonic black magic. And then like 1,000 years later, somebody was like, what if we put guitars to that? you know what I mean? So yeah, I thought about this Bavarian physician, like if you were to think about this from like a Disney movie afterlife kind of a portrayal, where he's like looking down or like looking into a portal or whatever from the afterlife, and he's just like, why are all these weirdly dressed people using the term black magic? What are they doing with their hands over there? Why is that guy's hair so big? It's like a lot of leather. That's a bold strategy. What's happening right now? Why is he
circling his head like that?
What's happening right now? And they're like, oh, you have the audio turned off on this portal. Here, let's turn that on. And they turn the audio on, and he's like,
I was right.
I think I was right about this, guys. I think there might be something evil going on here. Beethoven's head banging in the back or whatever. You know what I'm talking about. So, yeah, those were just, I had to like, I don't know, Robert, in place or this book, so like, I don't know, but I feel like in general, these terms are often directly correlated to classism and racism and like Christian evangelical puritanicalism. And like, that's a thing that we need to continually remind ourselves about, that we're surrounded by crazy people who want to make our lives more difficult for what seems like no bloody reason.
Yeah, so, I agree with all the things that you have said.
Soapbox set aside, guys. Yeah. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
I think that in a time where, I think that in the current time that we live in, we have so many things trying to fracture people apart. Yeah. And I think that focusing on you can't do this, or this isn't that kind of magic, or we don't do that kind of magic here, really sets anyone who is part of the pagan sphere, pagan being essentially just sort of the catch-all internet term for all of us here. Yeah.
You know,
I think that it really only serves to fracture people, and one of the side effects, one of the reasons, perhaps one of the purposes for the idea of fracturing a community like ours, like the pagan community, is so that we have less power.
Yeah.
It's easier to control a group of people that are fighting amongst themselves, because if they get together, then they rise up.
Yeah, it's easier to oppress your citizens when they're distracted
and they
with individual
have more
hate.
Power.
Yeah.
So I am pretty against the idea of dividing magical use into specific high and low, black and white, good and bad like that. I do not like that, because magic is sort of a needs-based thing. And I think that the intent is whatever it is that you want it to be, and trying to classify that stuff as any of these things does definitely open us up to, and all of the negative racial and societal class issues that you had mentioned.
Yeah.
But like, it also only serves to further fracture this community in a time where, as Americans, we very definitely need to group up. And even beyond Americans, there are a lot of groups throughout the world who wish us harm just because of our beliefs.
Yeah. Well, they don't like people who are different. That's how being different works, and people are simple. And like, again, like I don't have issues with the idea of black or white. I think that it's primarily a function of like linguistic history, right? Like I will have to do a TikTok about this. So in Magic the Gathering, there are like 5 specific colors of magic linked to the land, and there's like a whole bloody thing about it. It's a rather inventive way of looking at it, right?
Yeah, in a system
it's
like
that, it's like a broken down
really
elemental magic. Well, and it's like light magic and dark magic. So like I really wouldn't use black magic and white magic because I think that those have just like I think those have deeper implications.
Yeah.
But like light magic would obviously be magic in the light, for a lack of better words, with lightness, right? And dark magic is like things like shadow work or like magic in and around cemeteries and corpses and stuff. And I don't think that's negative, but I think that terms like dark magic and black magic have been used in the like greater social story like narrative for long enough that they have evil in quotes or bad guy in quotes connotations, right? To wit, I don't think that they should have those connotations, but they do, which means that if you're saying something, black magic, something, you also need to define, right? Or like something, dark magic, define, right? Just so that way you know. And I mean, to that end, if somebody's uneducated, shadow work would sound evil and bad, and it very obviously is not. Yeah. If you know what shadow work is. You know what I'm saying? So it's like that kind of a thing. But yeah, it's an interesting conversation. I feel like for another time, because I think that we're probably circling here.
Yeah. You know? So let's switch gears a little bit. So let's talk about how we work with curses. So do you do curses? Have you done curses?
Not really.
Without perjuring yourself?
Yeah, without perjuring myself? No, not really. But also, I'm not really, I don't know, man, like, with time, I am becoming an increasingly less structured practitioner of magic, right? And to that end, like, a curse is generally such a structure. There's such a shape to it, and I'm much more, I mean, I feel like were I in the magical place that I am now, but at a younger, less stable or mature sounds like I'm way less crazy. Less mature
we can't use that
in my
word,
life. Then like maybe I would have, but then I was more interested in like just like gathering knowledge, right? I was just like goblin piling data to be processed later, and now that I have the like maturity and time, and I don't have the time, but like meditation is like, you know, the time that I use for that, where I'm able to like unpack and explore that and find connections between those pieces of data. I now find the idea of curses to be like, I don't know, like just a little unnecessary. Like, are there people who probably deserve that? Yes, 100%. But for me, and you know, when we were talking about this earlier in the week, you were talking about something about curses. I think we saw something on like a movie or a TV show or something, and they were talking about curses, and you asked like, oh, something about curses. And I was like, not really. I mean, I feel like the closest thing I have like in my practice to like curse logic is the idea that like I believe that we are beholden to the idea that we need to protect and defend ourselves individually on a one-on-one basis with regard to people trying to oppress or put us down or anything like that. And I don't mean like with weapons or fists or something, but I mean like, is your boss treating you like shit? I understand that there is a business appropriate way to handle this, but your boss has crossed a line if they are putting you down, which means that you need to snap that shit back immediately. Just send an email to your boss telling them the way that they handled that was unacceptable. Carbon copy human resources and the CEO of the company. Like, immediate blast. Destroy these people. It does not matter, right? And the reason why is because they have to understand that that shit's not okay, right? We live in a place and in a time where we need to work together to better humanity because we are constantly on the precipice of shit getting out of hand with morons, right? So we also need to have the capacity to be like, hey, fuck you, dog. And to me, like, that's my curse. And that's what I told you earlier this week, too. Was like the closest thing I have to a curse is like if somebody's saying some incredibly unnecessary, hateful shit, and I wasn't just like an asshole, so I deserve it or something like that. I'm just gonna point at you and be like, "Fuck you, dog," and that's it. That's the curse. Fuck you. You now understand where I'm coming from. I understand that you're a piece of shit. Let's move on. Like that. Like that's it. You know what I mean? But I'm not really like a grudge-holdy person. That's not like my vibe. And I'm not like I would never ever in a million years consider myself like light in life and blah, or any of that stuff. But also like, okay, so this like small dick energy monster decided to be an asshole to me because they like didn't understand a situation or are too smooth to like grasp that. I mean, this isn't like, I work for myself now, so it's not me. But like, you know, a boss who doesn't want to like listen or can't grasp that I'm doing the job you asked me to do and you just like don't understand how this job works, even though you're my boss. Or like, if a situation like that were to occur, you know, I would be more satisfied with the like raw, unadulterated knowledge that this guy's a moron and I'm doing the right thing. So I don't need to like curse this guy because he's being an ass. Like I'm gonna tell him that he's being an ass, but like I'm not gonna curse him for it or nothing. So I don't really have that kind of like animosity in my life anymore, and I don't really have that kind of like grudge or whatever the heck. So I don't really do that stuff, but it's not for a lack of willingness. I mean, I guess if you felt particularly randy, you could be enough of an ass to push me to the place where I would have to curse you. And I would do such a ritual to curse you. Oh my goodness. The thunder that would be screamed at for this ritual, my guy. But like, I mean, I guess I could probably do that to that deer that keeps eating my fucking plants in the garden. But I mostly just go outside and yell at him, which is, I feel like my solution to most things. Is that if somebody's being an ass or interfering with my stuff, mostly this deer.
You're very much an old man yelling at things.
Old men yelling at clouds. Well, my clouds are deer because they eat my fucking garden. For now. They might be clouds too.
They might be clouds too. You definitely...
you know what? It was a little clouds during the rainy season. At the beginning of the year, like there was a bunch of flooding and I was just like, you shut up with this water shit! So, like, yeah, I'm much more of a, like, just shake my fist at the clouds, yelly old man than I am, like, do a big ritual to do a curse. But at the same time, I'm not really doing spells to, like, find success. It's like meditations and mantras and stuff. I don't know, man. I have like a very different relationship with the structure of magic than things like curses and spells. Mm-hmm. And I haven't figured out like exactly what that is. And like one day I will, and I'll probably explain it to you guys and it'll make no sense, as most things I say, I imagine do or don't. But yeah, that's not really like my vibe, dog. Mm-hmm. That makes it sound like I'm a hippie, but I'm not, kind of.
Only kind of.
I mean, I do live in the woods, so. Yeah. When I'm self-employed and live in the woods and I'm wearing like a hand
and you're actually wearing tie-dye right now.
Yeah, okay. So and maybe I'm like a little bit of a hippie.
Yeah, maybe
that's
you
on
are
me.
just
I did that to me.
Yeah, you did that to yourself for sure.
But what about you? Do you truck with curses? Are you throwing hexes left, right, and center?
Well, maybe not that often, but yes, I do definitely. I have sort of always done that when it's needed, and I still sort of do it. And there's a lot of different like ways that I've sort of experimented with doing antagonistic spells or curses. Mm-hmm. Like I've definitely done the poppet thing, creating like a figurine. No. Oh, okay. Creating a figurine. I've definitely done that. Don't worry, we have a whole episode on poppets and like figurine magic coming. In it. For like, so that's coming. I'm not sure exactly when that's coming, but it is in fact coming. So we got a whole episode about that. So I've definitely done the poppet thing. I've definitely done spells with like vinegar, which is generally associated with sort of curses, with, poking nails or pins or needles through things, sewing things up. I've definitely burned things. But I think for me as a magic user, the most potent curse that I have really ever done is something that I've always thought of as called marking. But as I've grown older, it's more along the lines of getting what they deserve. So
lowercase k karma.
Yeah, a little bit more immediate. So this one is one that I typically do in what I'd like to call a Roman fashion. So it usually happens when I am the most upset about something. However, that is not to say that I am doing this stuff left, right, and center. So I'm going to tell you what I do, and then I'm going to explain to you sort of how or when I normally do this type of a thing. So normally it's me being very upset at a situation or a person and talking, saying out loud, typically by myself, how upset I am and that I want them to get what they deserve. Yeah. So I am not saying I want this person to whatever the
You're not saying I want this guy to trip on a rock. You're being like, this guy was an ass. He's going to get what he deserves.
I want them to get what they deserve. Yeah. Because the thing is I don't know what the proportion is, yeah. Right? Like, and also I don't want to be the person to cause something really bad to happen to another person. Even as upset or angry as I may be, like at that person, at that situation, when I have done a curse, I don't wish somebody, a car accident.
Yeah, you know, like,
or anything like that. Like, I actually don't wish any of that stuff.
Sure.
That's not to say that I could never wish that, but that's just the place that I've done. And when I do that, I'm usually calling upon spirits and asking them to do my bidding, to mark this person so that they get what they deserve.
Yeah. So and then you're just buying them the express pass, the Disney Parks express pass, so they can cut in line at the old karma ride, in the park or whatever the heck.
Yeah,
so exactly. That's what you just gifting a dude. You're like, listen, Mickey, that guy over there seems like a real nice guy. Got him this pass so that we can cut in line. And Mickey's like, I'll deliver this shit to you. And then hands it to the guy. And the guy's like, sounds like a great idea. Cuts in line, gets what he's got coming to him or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's barely a curse. That's
cuts in line, gets an upset tummy later, can't go on any more rides.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sounds like he's got what he deserved.
He's taken by the menses or whatever that saying was.
The Mendes.
Yeah, whatever.
The Mendes, I think.
Mendes.
I think it's Mendes.
Yeah.
So that's what I normally do. Now, as time has gone on, I generally try to, rather than putting because it still expends magical energy. And for what it's worth, I have never noticed the threefold law in any work that I have done with that stuff. So if it's happening, I haven't noticed it. So your mileage may vary.
Well, but also, you're not saying you're not really doing, you're not actually doing any harm to a person.
Yeah. Right? I'm not saying not saying that your daughter's going to prick her finger on a spindle on her birthday and die
or whatever.
Yeah. I'm not doing any of that stuff. So as I get older with this sort of thing, and I think about the magical energy that I put out, I would rather expend my magical energy on things that better me. So I would, given the choice, I would, rather than doing a curse, doing something to get me into a position where I no longer have to deal with that situation that then caused that would have been a curse anyways. Sure. If I'm upset with someone, I want to do a spell to make it so that I don't have to deal with that situation anymore.
Sure.
Totally. In situations where that's not possible, I have typically tied my success into their karma. So something along the lines of the better I do, the worse they feel.
Yeah.
The more heinous what they get coming to them is, the more positive something is coming to me, so that I am specifically benefiting from one of these spells, as opposed to just having
like just harm. Oops,
just
all harm.
Oops, all harm, or
totally,
whatever it is. So, and then I just sort of like kick back and I just like let the magic decide what it's gonna do.
Totally.
And a lot of times when this has happened, it's been particularly delicious and juicy, and I enjoy it a lot.
Well,
and this sort of developed out of a habit. Out of a thing that I had noticed when I was considerably younger, where I would say something like that, and then somehow that person's karma was visited on them. And then it was like, oh, I'm speaking it to be true. So I do that a lot more intentionally nowadays. So do I work with curses? Absolutely. In my own specific way. And I'm pretty happy in the practice that I have sort of stumbled upon into with how I work with antagonistic magic.
Sure, totally. Yeah, I mean, I think that like the way that you're putting it, where you're basically just like, this person should get what's coming to them, like karma should get them or whatever. I think that's sort of like the same basic vibe for like why I don't like specifically do curses. Is like, it's all gonna work out, dog. Like, don't worry, if you're an asshole, we all know. So good luck with that, homie. Like that's kind of the way that I look at that. But also, like, just like if somebody does a thing, and like the example that came to my mind is, it's kind of like if you're driving down the freeway and somebody like is like swerving behind you and like cuts you off all hella dangerously or whatever the heck, and then like takes off, and then 5 minutes down the road you see them pulled over by a squad car, and you're like, oh, that you deserve it, dog. Like, it's that kind of energy. Like, did you make that guy get pulled over, or was it like definitely fated that guy was gonna get pulled over because he was driving like a maniac?
Or is it like a little bit of both?
Or is it a little bit of both? Exactly. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that some people have a pretty deep connection with curses, and I think that some people are like a little bit less. And like, I get both sides of the equation for what it's worth. I don't think that curses are specifically negative, and I don't think that curses, I don't necessarily agree with the idea that like you should never do curses, right? I think that it's kind of like a personal and situational decision. So I'm kind of whatever about that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about that as well.
I'm pretty whatever. It's interesting, for sure.
Yeah.
And if somebody's got curse-based questions, they want advice on a curse, like, I'm gonna give you deets, dog. You want to find out some good correspondences, like, I got you. Like, we actually don't have correspondences for this because it's generally so specific, and there's not like, this is an herb that you use for curses. I mean, like, there are technically those herbs, and I mean, a baked brick is definitely a correspondence for
a baked
curse.
Brick, that's
Hey, you want to curse somebody? Bricks. They communicate the point quite well.
Yeah. Well,
ask Berkeley in the 60s.
Yeah, a lot of herbs and plants, a lot that or like stones, like a lot of that kind of stuff. That's correspondence with like curses or like black magic. Are generally poisonous.
Yeah, they're also just crimes. Yeah, we're not going to give you a list. We're not going to give you correspondences for crimes, and a lot of the correspondences around hexes and curses are like, ooh, you could make a tea with this herb. Yeah, dog, that's just a regular crime. That's not a curse. That's called poisoning. There's already a word for that, my dude.
Yeah.
Like, thank you, no thank you.
Yeah, like, it's not really a curse if you, like, take a handful of a poisonous plant and, like, shove it into your enemy's mouth and run away. Yeah. Like, that's just a crime. That's not a curse.
In fact, it doesn't have to be a poisonous plant. You take a handful of regular plant and you shove it into somebody's mouth and you run away. You've committed a crime. Yeah, it could be a delicious plant. It could be basil or something. Still a crime, dog. You're not allowed to put stuff in other people's mouths without permission.
Yeah, get consent.
Duh. Yeah.
Get consent,
get consent before you.
Yeah, and speaking of consent, one interesting thing that I think is not often brought up in this whole curses sort of discourse is something that we talked about in our love magic, which is that some people don't do love magic because of the idea of free will and obtaining consent. And if that's a belief that you have, that you should obtain consent before you do magic on a person, or that you should not be altering their sort of thought process about things, I definitely urge you to think about that in relation to curses as well. I'm not saying if you believe that you shouldn't do curses. I'm just saying think about it.
Yeah, that is an interesting topic. And also, if you can get consent from somebody to curse them, that's impressive. Good for you.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm proud. I'm proud for you.
Yeah. So, I definitely want to see the link to that viral video.
The raw negotiation tactics of that consent form. Yeah, I'm very here for it.
Totally. So this was Curses and Hexes. Yeah. We hope that you got some interesting things out of this.
Although, is your job contract a consent form to be cursed to suffering in your current job?
Ooh.
Dark thoughts. Dark thoughts with Jonathan. Yay.
Yeah. I legally have no response.
Legally no comment,
no
my
comment.
Dude. I work for myself. I don't have an employee contract. I'm my own employer. Yeah. But curse me, I'm a terrible boss. Right? Always doing work. I could be being lazy.
Always doing work.
Yeah, I could be being lazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's curses and hexes, a little bit of history, a little bit of our insight. What's your opinion on it? That would be the most interesting thing to me. Do you do curses out there? Do you not do curses? Is there a particular reason why or why not? And if you do curses, don't admit to crimes in my comment section. Whoever is about ready to type something, never admit to a crime.
That's
don't
right.
do that.
Don't admit to crimes here.
But you can let me know what kind of curses you do that are non-specific and definitely not admitting to a crime.
Yeah.
Theoretical curses. Let's call them those guys.
Yeah, we have to make sure that the FBI agents who are monitoring all of our histories.
Yeah. I assume they're robots at this point in time. I assume it's FBI robots monitoring us.
We have to make sure that we're not incriminating ourselves.
Or everybody's in the FBI and just not us.
Yeah.
Like the Truman Show or whatever that's called.
Boy, that would be a twist.
Oh man. That would be very upsetting.
Yeah, but definitely I want to hear from y'all. Like, what are your thoughts?
What's your opinion? What are your thoughts on curses and stuff? Yeah, so comment below on...
Did you learn something interesting? Are you going to go and now read from the Book of Magical Papyri?
Yeah. Yeah, do you want to shout that stuff into a storm? Because that sounds fun.
It's very cool.
But yeah, so anywho, that was Curses and Hexes. And with that, we're gonna move on to the next part. Next part, shout out to our patrons. You guys are the best. So Alan, Miranda, Helena, Alexa, Somewhere, and Brianna, you guys are awesome. Thank you for supporting us. You're keeping us doing stuff and doing it better each time.
We appreciate you and what you do.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
And we appreciate your involvement in our Discord community as well.
Yep, fun conversations over there. Sometimes weird conversations, but they're always fun.
Sometimes weird, like what dinosaur would Zeus be?
That's fair.
Think about that.
Yeah. Comment below. Whatever. So yeah, and obviously if you want to join our Patreon and support us and be a member of our Discord and do all that kind of stuff, or even be a member of our Patreon community where within we do monthly hangouts where we all chit chat and just and
you get to hear about all the stuff that's going on in our life.
Yep. It's behind the scenes stuff, what's going on in our life stuff, and weird magical stories that we've just picked up over the last month.
Stuff that we've watched.
Yeah. Shows that we've watched or been
future plans.
Yeah.
All kinds of stuff.
So yeah, you can always join our Patreon and do all that stuff or what have you. So yeah, and then again, last but not least, I want to remind everybody who's still listening, because it's been a while, about the live. So December 3rd at 3 p.m., which is Sunday, the upcoming Sunday, if you're listening to this when it first comes out. That is going to be our 3-year anniversary live event on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is called Nerd Jive. And there'll be like links in our social media about this. So like check that out or what have you. And come hang out with us. Ask us questions. We could talk about pretty much anything. We're basically gonna like go live and then just like have a bunch of snacks and cocktails and hang out for as long as I feel like I want to hang out for.
Yeah.
It'll probably be a long time.
If you're not listening to this when it first comes out and you happen to have missed that live stream, we generally do our anniversary live streams on the first weekend of December on Sunday afternoon or evening. So if you're listening to this maybe a little bit later, pencil that in on your calendar for the next year.
Yeah. Well, and the live stream will be uploaded to the YouTube channel so you can like go back and watch it.
Absolutely.
If you're so interested, as well as if we mentioned this for every live stream. If people want more live goodness, we can always do more live goodness. This is like an on and off thing that we've talked about doing more lives and streaming and such like that for a while. Just because we do so many weird and witchy things on this little bit of property that we have.
Yep.
So, stay tuned for all of that stuff. And thank you for coming along on this cursed journey with us. Either way, I have been John Norgrove. This has been Julie Norgrove. This has been the Horn
and Cauldron
podcast. And we will catch you guys next time. Stay magical, folks.
Yeah. And don't forget, breathe in self-confidence and breathe out self-doubt.